Hi, Story Wilson with rswsolutions.com. Today we're going to work on my 2008 LR3. We're going to do a transmission fluid and filter swap, and we're also going to work on the ECU multi-plug at the same time. Today we're going to do this work at JC's British and 4x4, great local Denver, Colorado area independent Land Rover mechanic. I can't stress enough that when you own one of these vehicles, you need a good independent mechanic, and this job is an example why. There's lots of specialized work here, and this is a very long job, about a 4-hour job. So to get started, we're going to be dropping transmission pan to change the filter, but it's difficult because they designed this poorly. You have to remove a main frame crossmember, remove a catalytic converter and exhaust pipe. You have to remove an engine mount and jack up the entire engine and transmission and transfer case assembly up at 1.5 inches to gain access. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start loosening these bolts by putting penetrating fluid on all the exhaust bolts and the crossmember bolts, and when it comes, let it really soak in, let it do its job. When it comes time, hopefully everything will come free nicely. So we're going to start crossmember here, pretty rusty, but Leif here is doing a good job. He's a trained technician at JC's British. He knows exactly what he's doing. Crossmember came out okay. Before we remove it, we're going to support the transfer case with a jack stand. All those bolts freed up nicely. Next we're going to work on the exhaust bolts, and those are probably going to be pretty rusty. Leave that penetrating fluid in, let it do its job. These bolts are coming out nice and slowly, and luckily we don't have anything that's snapped off. Next we're going to be working on the upper bolts on this exhaust piping where it attaches to the manifold. These are not going to come out easily, so we're going to have to heat them with some oxyacetylene torch. It's difficult to gain access. You really don't want to snap these off. If you snap these off, you're in a lot of trouble. So go slow and don't force it. So Leif's going to apply oxyacetylene to it. He knows just how to get in there really quick, how much heat to apply, and then you're going to really quickly follow up with your ratchet tool already ready to go, because you want to get on that bolt really quick. And yeah, be really careful, you don't want to snap this off. Luckily we didn't break any bolts. It's always a possibility. So there we go, that's free. Make sure to remove the oxygen sensor plugs, disconnect them first. Also on, I think, earlier models 06, 05, the oxygen sensor has a bracket that snaps onto the cross member, so the frame cross member. So don't drop that frame cross member until you undo those. You don't want to pull off the wiring. Here we're just removing the transmission heat shield. Tiny bolts there, really tough to get out. Here we are removing the bolts on the engine mount, and note that there is no access from above. You really have to get at this from below. Helps to have the vehicle up high. We're ready to start jacking up the entire engine, transmission, and transfer case assembly, and you can see here where the engine is separating from the engine mount there. You want about a good 1.5 inches. You got to be careful. Don't go too hard and too high, because you don't want to move the vehicle in rack. We're ready to start moving some of the bolts on the transmission filter pan, and notice and take note. It's one big assembly. It's a plastic pan with filter embedded into it. So we're ready to start draining. It's important to consider this as a required maintenance step. It's not in the Rover manual to change transmission fluid, probably because it's so difficult. But I plan to keep this car more than 120,000, 130,000 miles. And this fluid came out of a car with 70,000 miles. It's not in great shape, not in terrible shape, but it was time to replace it. Here you see how difficult it is to remove this pan. There's a filler neck that extends up, and that catches. So really we had to buy ourselves about 1.5 inches clearance to get this pan out. All this work is to get that pan out from that front subframe. We're going to refill the transmission with Redline D6 ATF fluid. It's a good fluid. It exceeds all the OEM specifications, and most people say it's the exact same fluid. You be the judge, but so far the engine runs great. Transmission shifts fine. This is the ECU multi-plug. We're going to pry it out of there. That white clip at the bottom of the screen has to be pulled down, and then the plug can come out. This leaks, so you might as well replace it while you're in there, and you can't replace it until you drop the pan. So just spend the $5 and replace it. The older style plugs have a red gasket. The newer ones have a black gasket. Make sure and clean the area fully before you try to get it in there. You don't want to get any grit and grime in those O-rings. It's tough to get in there, so make sure and clean the area fully with some brake clean. And lube up the fitting with silicone. We're just refilling it here. Big thanks to JC's British and 4x4 for doing this work on the car. And Leif did a great job. Thanks, and visit my website.